Most notably, Mark worked on, he was one of the original designers in 1978, don't do the math, on the original Star Wars line. And you might know Mark Mark has been in Bloomberg, I didn't tell you this, I'm surprised. Mark has been in publications such as Bloomberg. Mark has been on The Toys That Made Us. I think if you've watched out that Netflix series, you have seen Mark Boudreaux. Mark, his reputation precedes him. Mark, you've got a number of lines under your name. Chuck Norris, as I mentioned, Sky Commanders, Centurions, Bone Age, I don't know what that is, Megaforce, Shadow Strikers, Jurassic Park, Transformers, what else? What have I missed?
Keep going.
Okay, but I will say this, more so than the legacy of brands he's worked on, anybody that has ever or still does work with Mark, because he's still putting everybody to shame in the toy industry. Mark is most renowned as a wonderful human being and a great guy, and we're very, very pleased to have him here. Thanks for coming all the way out from Rhode Island, Mark. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
So Mark is going to lead us down this nostalgia train of Ghostbusters toys from 1987 to 91. I think the neat thing is, Mark, that while you were working on these things and designing them, I was the kid at home playing with these toys. More importantly, not at home. I had to go to other friends' houses to play with these toys because my parents were like, no, you've already got too many Transformers. We're not getting you. So we had to, I recall on my 7th birthday, we went and saw Ghostbusters 2. And we came home, me and my best friend Brent, we had the same birthday. We went and saw Ghostbusters 2, and we came home, and all we wanted to do was don all of our Ghostbusters gear and kick some ghost butt. And we did. In the process, I broke a lamp with a golf club. It got out of hand. It was a little crazy. But nevertheless, I've gone through and we started looking at these commercials, and man, anybody that's in the similar age range, these are just gonna smack with nostalgia. So we're gonna take you through some commercials, and we're gonna take you through some product. And,
okay, let's get it going.
We got it. Shut up, Kevin. Let's go. Uh-oh. Aren't these the best? Listen, we'll make this sound. It's Ghostbusters. Get your guy out of the sewer, and then this guy eats pizza. I know.
Over here, it's Bug-Eye. I think he's got his eye on you, Winston. Uh-oh, somebody needs a phone. Watch it, that squisher. I think you gross. Let's turn these ghosts into toast. Neutralize them. Ghostbusters, each sold separately from Kenner.
Wow!
Oh, yes. There's an empty chair
Listen,
up here.
You, sir, not only get another poster at the end of the evening, yeah, we're going into the evening, you also get an autograph from Mr. Mark Boudreaux for that. That was, oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you for making up for my complete lack of preparation.
No, I think my might try to fix our little issue, but that was awesome.
Is my computer what?
And your name was? Sir, what was your name? Your name?
Jack Porter.
Jack, thank you very much.
And he's only 17.
But he has YouTube. Listen, Jack Porter's, I think, just going to narrate the commercials for us. I think we're going to be in good shape. Aaron, if we do solve it, I don't know what to do. But anyway, all right, this was, nope, that was the commercial. And here we go. 1987, folks, the heat goes on. No doubt Kenner was riding the wave of the Glenn Frey hit. The heat is on. But for legal reasons, changed it to Ghost. Anyway, these are these awesome brands that Mark worked on that I'm talking about, including Chuck Norris. I still have more questions. We'll skip that.
Okay.
Here's the line, Mark.
So we started out with our heroes. Each character was 5 1/4 inches high, and it was kind of a fresh thing for me because working on Star Wars, it was all 3 3/4. So having a taller figure ultimately would give us the opportunity to do different things that we can't do at a smaller scale. So it was really cool. And then we went into our action ghosts. These were designed to be lower cost offerings with simple features. And the really cool thing was we started using well-known phrases like bad to the bone and Bug-Eye to help with our development process. And it was funny, in the film, I remember seeing Peter calling Janine Bug-Eye, when she's talking to them in the office. So while most of you have seen the production ghosts, we have brought along some original sketches circa 1986 That's 33 years. That's nearly half of my lifetime ago. So it's cool. It's cool that Ghostbusters is very relevant to this day.
I think we even dug out some of the original toys here. That's my bag of tricks. This is my.
So we had Bad to the Bone, H2 Ghost, which was a ghost that looked like one, but then it would also split in half. Split in half and become two ghosts. So it was really a lot of fun. Simple stuff, but it really was things that were a part of the lore and that we thought really represented Ghostbusters. We were very fortunate to be given a lot of leeway and creative latitude with doing this. And since it was animated, it even adds an extra level of coolness for the designers, because it really opens the gates and lets us do things that you normally wouldn't do if it was a live action, scenario. So having the animation really for Kenner was a great thing, because it really let us do toys. And that was the main thing we wanted to do here.
So, I think since you guys showed up, we owe you a treat, as promised. I think we teased some of it as we were out there. This is really cool in that these haven't been seen by anybody. I think maybe the dark closet that they were sitting in for 30 some odd years, Mark, but we have Mark's original concept sketches from this development phase on these toys.
So yeah, way back, no Photoshop, no 3D, just pen on paper. So these were the original sketches, Bad to the Bone, and the two vaporizers actually became H2 Ghost. So there's always an evolution when we're doing product. The very first time you look at something, you're like, oh, okay, maybe it needs a little bit more work. So it's an evolutionary process.
And I think one thing was cool that you were talking about, Mark, is that you guys were given some leeway to create some new ghosts. And you mentioned Bug-Eye Ghost in there. And I think for most of you well in the know fans, that Bug-Eye Ghost found his way into other places. Bug-Eye Ghost found himself into the IDW comic books, into the animated series, into the Ghostbusters World app. But were it not for the necessary cost reductions, we would have been living in a completely different world, Mark. He would have looked entirely different.
Yeah, he would have had two eyes. We had to cost reduce it. But actually, going from 2 to 1 made a bigger statement, and so it really worked out well. And that was the original two sketches for the original.
Those original ones, I'm glad it netted out this way. Some of those are
I think it turned out really well. And our sculptors really had a great time with doing this line also.
Oh, ectoplasm. I remember certainly spilling a can of this all over our taupe-colored shag carpet in our house, and it didn't end well for me. But hopefully you guys didn't have those problems, but I'm sure the original ectoplasm, that must have been fun to work with, Mark.
Oh, yeah. We ultimately did different colors, yes. Purple was the first one. And then we did the Gooper Ghost. That was something really cool. With the slime, it was a must-have to incorporate into the product. Our goal was how do we take these oversized ghosts and have them be very interactive with our figures? So we had Squisher, and these are all the original Kenner sketches and our preliminary model. So you can see that they made it to the production intact pretty much. Squisher was all about, put the character in, push down on his head, the slime would ooze out of the mouth and out of the nose. So we really tried to make this as gross and as cool and as fun as possible, take full advantage of the slime. Then we had the Banshee Bomber.
Is this Eric Estrada action figure in all of these pictures?
Well, back in the day, we would mock things up, and we would use any and everything that we could find.
Or Eric Estrada.
It is called kit bashing. That is very good. The Banshee Bomber was truly a winged terror with its spring-loaded mouth dropping slime from above. And then finally we had Sludge Bucket. Its mouth was the reservoir, and by squeezing its tail, air would be pumped up into the slime and create a bubble. And you just didn't want to be around when it popped.
So he originally had this curling feature.
Yes, on the original design, he was a goose slinger, right? So he could actually you'd put slime in his hand and it would be spring-loaded, and you'd actually throw slime or throw a figure. Sometimes cost reductions happen, and so the arm went away and it just became a sludge bucket instead of a goo slinger.
Plus the name Sludge Bucket.
Yeah, that's so much cooler.
Ah, the Ecto One! We got it! Boom! Oh wait, and the seat that always fell off, that you always lost. Gunner seat on top, and the claw in the back, the ghost winder. You guys remember this? You would
You would open the back and
You'd wind it. So the really cool thing about, one thing I mentioned before, what we really loved about having this be done in animation style versus live action style, the animation really was able to give everything its own personality, including the vehicles. So you really got a unique presentation for the line, and which I think made it very special and unique. One thing before we get into some role play, I used to
teased it out. I just teased the role play. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. There was a friend of mine that I worked with for a long time. His name is Ham Woodhouse. He's no longer with us, but he was responsible for most of, if not all, of the role play for Ghostbusters and many other weapons on many other lines. You might have heard of a lightsaber. You know, he was responsible for many of those other things. So I just wanted to do a shout out to Ham. I know he's up there listening and did a great job. You know, we had the ghost popper. We needed something that could neutralize a ghost at a distance, and the ghost popper was the answer. It was also Kenner's way to compete with the very popular Nerf line. As Kevin just showed, it was a forced air launching system, and we actually used packing foam for our darts. So that was kind of an interesting thing.
And so as you mentioned, these originated as what Kenner's attempt to, not attempt, but Kenner's answer to Nerf, right? Finger poppers. You pop them with your fingers. Is that like, boo!
Yeah, and all they were was packing peanuts, and so we just put them in a blister and sold them. So
that's fantastic.
well, every once in a while, you know.
Ah, capitalism, I love it.
Yes.
That's fantastic. But so it's like pool noodle material.
Pool noodle material.
Not
yes.
a life-saving device, though.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, unless you had a lot of them, but. So we want to kind of change gears a little bit here. With all this high energy capture going on, we also wanted to explore the ghost softer side. The Safe Puff was big and huggable, and Slimer made for a great hand puppet. Kind of reminds me of Jabba the Hutt a little bit, but best of all, they could still be used as targets for your ghost popper. So no matter how cool they were still ghosts, and you still wanted to bust them. And then we had the Neutrona Blaster, aka light tag, a laser tag. Was a safe, fun, and active way to bust.
Shoot your friends in the crotch.
Long range. I was just going to say long range, but
Okay.
I guess that'll work too.
Why was he in a sewer?
I have no idea.
I'm sorry, you didn't have to do it with catalogs. But listen, I often played in sewers as a child.
true.
I get it.
And last but not least, we had the Proton Pack, the ultimate ghost busting piece of hardware. It told those
There it
ghosts.
is.
I saw a lot of great cosplay Proton Packs today, so kudos. So it meant that you meant business if you were wearing your Proton Pack.
The envy of the neighborhood. The Proton Pack.
Yes.
Goodness. Uh-oh, and then it came 1988. Look at that. The sun is rising. It's rising in 88, right?
It must be.
It's gotta be. We're gonna do, you guys will recognize this one. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, that sound! I'm sorry,
It's the
Jack.
Real
Go ahead, do
Ghostbusters
it.
Firehouse playset.
Magnet, our firehouse is haunted. No way. Oh no, I've been gooped. Then he goes to the stadium.
The Real Ghostbusters, each sold separately, assembly required.
Hey buddy, see anything weird? It's from Stone Tackle. Don't lose your head. Take a hike. There's a policeman. Oh no, it's Tom. I can't believe my eyes. Whoa, we're not scared.
Oh, the puns. I love the puns. I don't know if you guys can hear this, but Jack up here, Jack, right?
Yes.
recited that whole thing.
Word for
Yeah,
word.
I think it's, I don't have anything else to give you other than posters, but please keep going with it.
Yes.
Oh man, the firehouse.
Oh, yes.
I know I mentioned the envy of the neighborhood, Mark, with the proton pack, and that was true, but I remember, again, I didn't have any of these toys. I talked to my therapist about it. But my friend down the street, Brent, he had all of these. The day he got the firehouse it might as well have been Christmas. It might have been Christmas. But nevertheless, everybody came over to his house to play with the firehouse. But I don't quite remember it looking exactly like
Well,
this.
I was given the task of designing the firehouse, and they thought in plastic, but it ended up just being in foam core. So that was something that we would do a lot. We would make things in foam core. It was really easy for us to test things, to make changes. And what happened was the foam core model was the only model that was around at the time. And so they used the foam core model as the underlay for that particular illustration. Folks that might be aware of Kenner catalogs, that happened from time to time, and this was one of those cases where we just didn't have anything else. I will say one thing about the toy itself. I mean, it had the usual suspects. It had a goober grate, and it had a containment unit and all that fun stuff. But when it came to the fire pole, we didn't want to just have figures come crashing down to the garage floor. So I put a spiral on the central post, and that created a spinning action. So the cool part about it was a very simple but very elegant way of giving the playset a little bit more action, a little bit more fun, because the character is sliding down and spinning all the way from the top to the bottom. So again, a simple thing, but really made sense. You're watching Ray kind of slide down the pole and spin a little bit in the film. We wanted to just kind of exaggerate that for the toy.
And this is to the point of the foam model you were talking about. This is all...
Right. Back in the day, I mean, we all have phones now, and they all have high-resolution cameras in them. But back in the day, it was kind of difficult to find camera equipment, but we did have a Polaroid. So I was able to take these 4 shots, and this is all that's left of the original foam core, these 4 Polaroids. But it was really cool. It was a way for us to, again, show our team, show marketing, get people really excited about it, and then we went right to plastic from this.
This is all handmade, hand-cut.
All hand-cut.
Getting your hands dirty.
And actually there's a bit of, it's not just straight up and down, because this was animation. We wanted to give it a little bit of flair, so it actually gets larger as you go to the top.
Oh, we're going into another commercial here. You ready, Jack? I want you to predict which commercial this is. No.
Ghostbusters! Dan, cheer me up! Ecto-2 roast those ghosts. Got him! Bateman, Ecto-2's a mean machine. It's creating arrows. I hear ya. Run! Ow! Let's fly! Wait for me!
The Real Ghostbusters. Figures and vehicles each sold separately. New from Kenner.
Ghostbusters! We
Yes.
should hurry, boss. Isn't that sunny?
Jack, were you an understudy for these kids in the commercials? Is that what happened here?
I mean, I'm 17.
Oh,
I'm a diehard fan of this.
you indeed are. That is impressive, sir.
I have every figure. So, Mark, I have all your creations.
Wow. There you go. You've got all the, he said he had every one, so I'm not going to ask any follow-up questions, but I'll tell you what, for me, nothing exemplified the Ghostbusters line like the Fright Feature figures. I mean, these things either you loved them or they gave you nightmares for weeks, or a little bit of both, but oh my goodness, the memories of these, right?
Yep. Well, it was very interesting because, again, the animation styling gave us a lot of flexibility, let us change proportions of the characters, especially like the haunted humans. It's always a balancing act between the aesthetics and the engineering. But because of the animation, it really gave us some room. It was always kind of a contest with the designers. How much can we pack into any given volume of material? So it's amazing how a spring, a little bit of plastic, and a lot of imagination can do. So we thought we were able to combine all of that stuff into a pretty successful segment, and so we think it's a win-win. Oh, we talked about the Ecto-2 there. Yeah, that was really cool, something that we just made up internally. What we would do, we would typically do a sketch. This is my first sketch that I did of the Ecto 2, just real quick, one afternoon. And once we do a sketch, it's shown to the team. If that's approved, we had our own model shop. And so we were able to make one-off prototypes, prove out mechanisms and everything. So it was fully ready to go. I worked in the preliminary design department, and then we would turn things over to our production group, and then they could follow through in production.
And I gotta tell you, Mark, these designs, as we go through this, it really makes you appreciate the fact that you guys are, you really capture just the spirit, the whimsy, the tenor of this brand, but really your designs and what you guys were developing kind of became a part of the design language and the flavor of the brand. And I think it's just really cool that we've got you to thank for really kind of baking some of the elements into this brand that we're so familiar with. It's really cool. Case in point.
Oh, the Highway Haunter, I believe it was. It was a great little Volkswagen that turned into a praying mantis, which is kind of fun.
That made an appearance in the comics as well.
There was a comic cameo in there. We've got a couple other comic cameos along the way as we go through here. So 1989, with its 1959 theme here with the jukebox. So this is, here we go. Now we're into Ghostbusters 2. Jack, what do you got for us?
I actually can't remember.
We found his kryptonite.
Well, I've seen the other version of this one, which was a lot, and it featured the Ecto 500.
Oh, yes, the Ecto. Jack, you may not have remembered it, but you provided a perfect segue into the Ecto 500. Thank you, sir. By the way, we're still impressed. We can't. Come on.
A little known fact. Did you guys know that in the sequel, the Ecto 1A was originally called the Ecto 2? But I guess they switched that because the Ecto 2 is a helicopter, not a car.
Well, there you go.
But in one shot, you can't see the Ecto 1A have a plate that says Ecto 2.
Well, there you have it. I mean, we got some film trivia in here as well, Jack. We were not at all aware of that. I'm sorry, I thought we were segueing into the Ecto 500. That's a little bit later. I buried the lead. But these guys.
I lost my spot.
Oh, no, sorry, Mark.
Where are we? Yes. Super Fright features. Yes. It was really cool. The Super Fright features, Kevin's got a couple of examples. Again, a challenge. The 5 1/4 inch figure really lent this to happen. As I mentioned before, a spring, a little bit of plastic, and a lot of imagination goes a long way. These were concept. Go ahead and hit the next slide. We started doing concepts of what these fright features might be. So, yes, and simple mechanism, little push button on the back. And then it also showed our model shops models. And the interesting thing was, when you do preliminary things, they don't always correlate to exactly the production. But the big challenge was, how do you fit 5 pounds of fright into a 2-pound hero, right? Because it really does take some ingenuity to get all this mechanism within tight spaces. So we had Scareface Winston that actually became Ray. We had Heads Up Ray version 1 that became Winston. Heads Up Ray version 2, which became Peter. And then Janine ended up with the fish tank helmet. So, do you have that?
Yeah, fish tank Janine, yes.
So that's cool.
Terrifying eyes.
Yes, and speaking of fright features, actually, if you go to the next slide, I think as cool as the fright features were, I think the most terrifying ghost that we ever created was Fearsome Flush. So like, the bottom line here is, remember to always look before you sit. Yes,
And speaking of IDW Comics, I think the guys that were in here before would appreciate, they have, what's going on? Found their way to sneak Fearsome Flush into the comics too, in the most subtle of ways. I don't know, I guess that's subtle, but nevertheless, pretty cool.
yes, it is.
A nice homage. Oh, this guy, the mini trap. I always remember Remember this? You'd stick your finger in and chop it every time. I don't know, like, was the play pattern that I was supposed to be able to get my finger out there in time?
Well, see,
my little knuckles were so bruised.
That was Mr. Woodhouse.
Oh, of course.
See, he was British and he has that sort of humor. So I think that was his way of kind of getting back at the rest of us. So we talked about the Ecto 3 and the Ecto 500. So going from a go-kart to any car, it was always fun to take our everyday recognizable vehicles and retrofit them into awesome Ghostbusting machines. So we have the Ecto 3 here first, and each of the sketches show a refinement of the function. We have these little electrified fly swatter, ghost swatter tongs in the front. So the sketches were a great way for us to quickly make changes, and then again, our model shop created the model that you see there. And then for ghosts that were faster than the average go-kart, the team needed to get a little bit more horsepower, so they created the Ecto 500. Here you see the original sketch. The original design used a rear wing trap that swung forward to capture the ghost, while the production version used extendable air intakes to kind of grab your ghost. So again, but the nice thing about it is, as Kevin mentioned, we tried to come up with a new form factor or a unique form factor for Ghostbusters. And so instead of using a high-tech Indy car, we used, a 50s, 60s version of an Indy car. We'd like that vintage retro look to the elements that we designed for Ghostbusters, and that's why you see the appearance that you see.
These are going to be our four.
Oh yeah, no, okay, so another commercial.
Commercial pause. There we go.
Ghostbusters! Each sold separately.
Break out the new equipment! Ghost trap set. Ecto goggles down. It's Marshmallow Man. Ecto pumper ready. Neutron blast to charge. Roast them. Got 'em. We ain't getting up.
It's the Ghost Trap from the Real Ghostbusters.
I love his monogram dad. I'm sure somebody on the commercial was like, we gotta make sure he doesn't just look like a creepy neighbor. Let's really make sure it's his dad on there, big and bold. The 80s commercials, man, I'll tell you what, might have been the best part about the 80s. That was fantastic.
Okay, we'll continue with Ham's roleplay elements. To be a Ghostbuster, you needed your proton pack, but you also needed all your gear, especially the ghost trap. Ham used a simple air pump to activate the opening doors for the containment unit. Sometimes there's always a tendency to complicate designs, but he knew that simple was always better. And at work, we always said, it's the old adage, it's the old KISS principle, if any of you guys know what that is. So it was something that we kind of lived by. We thought that, you can always make something really complicated and expensive, but it's a real master who can simplify things and still deliver the content, but make it something that's fun and functional and also elegant.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid
There it
is what
is.
that means.
Just in case.
Just in case you didn't know.
There it is, the ghost trap.
Yeah, and that's Ham's sketch and our prelim model,
So cool.
which looks just like out of the film and out of the animation.
Oh man, we're getting into the 90s here. Then came 1990, and they were back. The Ecto
With a
1A,
vengeance.
as we've learned.
Yes, and we started with the Slimed Heroes. We always had a lot of fun developing each hero series. This time around, we use a bit of magic technology. We love the traditional slime, but it was always a bit messy. So we turned to chromatic paint. At room temperature, this paint, when applied, was nearly invisible. So it was perfect for what we wanted to do. It was a bit more expensive, but the end result was worth it. So our heroes thought that they would be protected from the ghosts by using their high-tech gear, but they were in for a big surprise. So you just filled your ghost with cold water and you watched the fun slime pattern appear. So it was awesome. They looked perfectly normal in your first mode. You wear all this great gear. They get hit by the cold water, and when you take the gear off, any of the negative spaces of the like visors or goggles that Ray was wearing, or Lewis, I think, was wearing some goggles as well, they would have, their flesh would be exposed, but everything would be shown, but everything else would be slimed. And to turn it back, all you had to do was let it warm up or hit it with some warm water, and you were back in business. So again, very simple, but very elegant and very appropriate to the overall theme of Ghostbusters.
Well, I'll tell you, I think the thing that's commendable about these, Mark, is that you guys took basically the same figures that had been in the line now at this point now.
And made them fresh and new. Yeah.
Not only made them fresh and new visually, but you added a whole new story to them.
Yep.
You guys were crafting a story along with this that may or may not have had some, resonated from the animation to some degree, but you guys were really building some thought into this.
So like I said, at the time, our partners gave us a lot of latitude, and we hope that we did them proud by, doing the product.
I should say so. Oh, vehicles.
Okay,
Man,
vehicles. I'm going to read just a little bit here. I would say that our heroes had some pretty cool rides. They could take to the skies in the Ecto Bomber and clean up the streets with the Ghost Sweeper and the fire truck. Our concepts usually evolved, and these were no exception. The original designs were a bit too large and complicated, and therefore a little bit too costly. For production, they were reduced in size and complexity, but we were able to keep all the interactive features. For the Ecto Bomber, I was especially happy, there you go. I was especially happy that we could preserve the vintage open cockpit look of the original. We kind of talked about this before. We didn't want this to be a sleek, brand new fighter jet. This wanted to be just sort of open air, fun, propeller driven thing, and it really was in keeping with the overall look. But we were able to keep the Ecto Bombs in the grabber claw. As it turned out, the fire truck, that you see there, actually was kind of a concept. Two things merged together. There was only a spot for one. We had the airport fire truck and we had the garbage truck. Everybody loved both, but like I said, we only had room for one. So we did the only fair thing that we could do. We put both concepts into a blender and outpoured a little fire truck, a little red fire truck. So this one. So it took all the great attributes of both and combined them into one.
I gotta tell you, I'm full with 7-year-old envy all over again. I feel like I'm looking at the Sears catalog in 1989. Like that, I want this. How do we?
Yeah, it's
gone. Okay, forget it. But no, I think it's incredibly impressive to see the amount of detail, the amount of thought that you guys put into these. Every single little call out, the amount of again just detail into what every little thing did, rather than it's just a fire truck. And noted that you had to distill it down to just the things that worked, but it started with something so much bigger and so much more thought.
So it's always great to have those recognizable elements to start with, but then it was the passion of the individual designers and the engineers and the model makers, and just knowing what Ghostbusters was all about, and how can we turn what you think is just a everyday mundane element into just awesome ghost fighter equipment. So
if I'm not wrong, their going budget for vehicles was about $4,000 each. So
yeah,
they had to work with what they had.
Ray didn't have a lot to work with. So.
4,800.
Sorry, thank you.
Damn, keeping us on our toes, Jack.
And then, I forgot to say, and then we also had the street sweeper. It also had to go on to a bit of a diet, but the features remained.
I love, again, attention to detail. The speaker on top of the street sweeper is playing "Everything is Beautiful" as just I don't know, some sick irony as you're sucking up a ghost into its demise.
Exactly.
The toy does not actually play music. Okay.
Okay, we'll continue with our role play. The role play segment continued to expand with simple and easy to use weapons. A couple of examples. The Ecto Blaster had a magazine that could fire 4 slime pellets without reloading. So if you're an active kid and you're running around, having 4 shots at your friends, that's pretty cool. And then the Ghost Nabber in the trap was another great simple item that delivered the satisfying Ghostbuster experience. Again, Ham took an air-powered piston, added a bit of Velcro at the tip, and which made easy work of our cute little fabric ghosts, and the opening trap provided ample and secure storage. Again, here's an example of the actual toy was not available at the time when we printed the catalog, so this was actually hand sketch. So that's pretty cool.
It's just as good.
It's just as good.
Just as good.
His model looked just like that sketch, and so did the actual toy. So, and last but not least, we had our glow.
I just paused it on this.
Sorry.
Just in case you couldn't tell, this is clearly the 1990s.
Yes.
I mean, we are in it deep now. This is, I think that's Zach Morris on the front there. This is fantastic.
So, last but not least, our Ecto Glow heroes. As I mentioned, it was always fun and often challenging to come up with the next hero segment. Our question was this time, how could we have our heroes actually enter this ghostly spirit world? So glow-in-the-dark technology was the answer. It was, again, simple but so effective. Just turn out the lights and they turn a ghostly green. We molded the figures, the gear, and the ghosts in phosphorescent pigment, and since green actually holds the light charge the longest, green it was. And it really, I think green really made a lot more sense than any of the other colors that we could have used. And Slimer comes to mind. So it really, again, was a part and parcel to what we thought Ghostbusters was all about.
Now, I noticed there's severed heads at their feet here, Mark.
Yes, something a little bit different. Sometimes in the action figure world, we'll have interchangeable heads, different expressions, things like that. But for a kid line, this is pretty unique to actually have severed heads in the package. But the reason we did that is because they have their day mode, right? You have to have just a normal head. And then, but when they went into the ghostly world, it wouldn't have been too good. Their heads would have just been floating around, and the ghosts would have seen them right away. So we had the interchangeable heads so that when they decided to go into the ghost world, their heads went along for the ride. So it was very unique, again, for a kid's segment. A lot of times we do it in the older action figure stuff, but it made a lot of sense for this too. So
now, I think we've got a few minutes left here. We did pretty well on time, Mark. And I think first of all, round of applause for Mark. Yeah. For all you guys, we appreciate you coming out. But Mark, this is such a small fraction of your body of work, but so grateful to have had you work on this. But if we've got time for some questions, you open to fielding some questions?
Well, I appreciate the invite to come. I mean, I see a lot of passionate, fans here. I've seen a lot of other folks fully dressed outside. So I applaud all your passion and keep Ghostbusters going. So congratulations to you guys.
We do have some questions. I'll bring the mic around.
Hi, I have a couple questions. One, I noticed Egon's Lab was up there, and I understand that was never actually released. So I was wondering if you could talk about that, and also I was curious if you had any input on the Diamond Real Ghostbuster figures that are out now.
I don't know much about the characters you just talked about, unfortunately. Okay. But I kind of worked on Egon's Lab. Memory serves, I thought it was produced, but it may not have been. It was a long time ago.
We're sorry to disappoint you, Mark. It never went out. Gosh, we're sorry you had to hear about it this way. Oh man.
So it does happen. There's sometimes for reasons beyond the control of the designer or the engineer. Sometimes it doesn't make it all the way out. But you know what? That doesn't mean that we don't do our best, creative work the best we can. We always look at the product that we're doing as, it doesn't do any good if it's just sitting on our shelf in the office. We want it to be out there for the fans. I mean, that's why we're making this stuff. And so if that one didn't make it, and I'm sorry my memory didn't kind of support that, but we always look at things like, hey, you know what? Every one of these things are going to go out on the shelf, or why are we doing this? So we love what we do, but thanks for the question.
I think we had a question over here from Jack.
Now, Jack, you're like 3 times younger than me, so be kind.
Well, did you ever have any friends from the Star Wars times that helped work with you on the Ghostbusters line?
Oh, absolutely. We had a great core of designers at Kenner, which included Ham Woodhouse. He was a big Star Wars. I was kind of the vehicle guy, but we all did different things, role play and figures and vehicles, play sets. But we were very fortunate to have a core group of designers at work that worked on all these, most of the lines that Kevin talked about. Obviously, it's not just me. It takes a village, as they say. And we had a lot of dedicated, individuals, not just the designers, but the model makers, tooling guys, our partners in China, everywhere that touched the product. We've been very fortunate that everybody, to a fault, and to a guy or to a gal, if they're working on the line, they're putting their best foot forward. And so it was always great. But yeah, I was very fortunate to work with a lot of folks, and still am, on a lot of different lines.
I think we got a couple more here, guys. Here you go.
Hey, what's up? I never owned the firehouse as a kid, but I owned the police academy police station. Now, did they use some of the, because they look similar?
Yes.
Well yeah.
I mean, sometimes tools are reused if it's appropriate. We really talk about whether we should do things like that. If you can change up, if you can use a tool and save a little bit of money, that's not a bad thing. And if it works out to be appropriate for the given line, again, that's not such a bad thing. And as long as it can deliver what the new brand is looking for, that's not bad. It's not bad. Actually, we did that for, we took a bunch of Star Wars, totally unrelated, I'm sorry, but we took a bunch of Star Wars product and retrofitted them to be Robin Hood. So
it was the Ewok Village, right?
We took Ewok Village, we took Ewok battle wagons, we took a bunch of, we took, what's the other brand? Which I worked on as well. Superpowers, yes, thank you. Senior moment every once in a while. We took Superpowers figures and turned them into the Sheriff of Nottingham and, that kind of fun stuff. So, we mix and match parts, and that's kind of the fun part of being a toy designer as well. We'll do a lot of the hardcore, let's make an authentic element from the film, but then we also can have some fun. That's why we're doing it, because we have a good time.
I think we got one more right over here. One more. Appreciate it, guys.
I noticed that the Ghost Trap is 1989. That was quite a few years after you started the role play line with the proton pack and everything. Was there a reason that waited so long? I've always been curious.
Well, there is so much time during the day. A lot of times when we start a line, we'll get together as a team. We'll get together with the licensor and everybody. So everybody has an input. We will take a look at what are the key beats and where do we need to kind of start. So obviously proton pack is way up on the list. The trap is as well, but you only have so much bandwidth. There's only so much hours in the day. There's only so many people working on the product. We all would love to do this stuff at the very beginning. But what's really cool about it, you notice that we did Ghostbusters for 5 years. So there's something to be said about being able to let the line evolve. And it just made sense by that time we were ready for that trap.
I lied. I'm gonna allow one more question. These guys got here first. They sat all the way up front, came in from Saskatoon. Here you go.
What has been, it could either be Ghostbusters or any other product line that you worked on. What's your favorite, and then what's one that you wish you could have done something differently?
That's a loaded question.
Should have started with that.
Full of people that like Ghostbusters, right? Well, first of all, I've been very fortunate. I started back when I had black hair and young and all that fun stuff. And so I've been very fortunate to be in the toy business. My first exposure to toys was Star Wars, and I'm still working on that to this day. So that's a once in a lifetime thing that's not lost on me. But I've had the opportunity to work on, Jurassic Park, had presentations to Mr. Spielberg, actually playing dinosaurs with him on the table. A lot of things that you would never be able to do in real life. But working in the toy industry really has been very special. I will say that the one thing, well, as many toys I like, for Ghostbusters, I think Bug-Eye was like my coolest thing. just because it was just goofy and fun and very fun to play with, lots of energy. From the Star Wars sense, I've designed all the 3 3/4-inch Millennium Falcons that we've done for the last 40 years, so I'm kind of proud of that.
Every single one.
And actually, I got to sit in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon in England when they were filming Return of the Jedi, so that was kind of cool. It's hard for me to actually pick one thing because I've had the fortunate ability to work on a lot of things. But I would say, and this is kind of sound corny, but it's true, I think the biggest thing is working with all the people that I've had a chance to either meet with or work directly with all these years. A lot of people have gone on and done other stuff, but everybody that worked on the various lines, whether it's Star Wars or Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters, what have you, everybody's left their mark, either in the catalog page or on the shelf. And we hope that in our own little way, we hope that we've left our mark with you guys. It's something that, we're boots on the ground. We're in the office every day. And so when they do lengthen the chain, and for us to be able to get out to these events, it's really pretty special. And so for us to look at your guys' passion, it makes us feel pretty good too, because we're a bit isolated if you look at it that way. I mean, we think we're doing some really cool stuff and we hope it's a product that everybody likes. But to see everybody's passion for the product and having the young guys here, a couple of them sitting in the front playing on their phone.
He's just tweeting where he is right
now. Yeah, that's right. You say how cool the presentation was. Thank you. But that's really what it's all about, is just the experiences and the people that we've had the opportunity to work with.
Well, Mark,
a lot of great people.
I can say with confidence that anybody who's ever worked with you regards it as one of the highlights of their career while having worked at Kenner, Hasbro, or anywhere else. So we appreciate all that you've done for these brands. We appreciate you being here and your time, your dedication throughout the years. And appreciate you guys for having come out.
And thank you very much.
Very grateful for your questions, your attention, and everything else. It's been great. Thank you.